My name is Martha. I am 70 years old, and in this city, people either know my name or they live in a building I helped finance. For decades, Eve navigated the shark-infested waters of the Manhattan real estate market, turning dilapidated warehouses into luxury lofts and empty lots into glass and steel landmarks. They think I'm just another elderly widow living off a pension and Social Security, a relic of a bygone era. They have no idea that I still hold the keys to the kingdom. Today was Mother's Day. In the United States, it's a billion-dollar industry of brunch reservations and overpriced carnations, but for me, it used to mean something real. When my husband, Arthur, was alive, I'd make sure the house was filled with white lilies, my favorite, and we'd spend the morning listening to old jazz records while the sun spilled across our brownstone in Brooklyn. But Arthur has been gone for 5 years now, and it seems that the respect he commanded in this family vanished with him. To my daughter-in-law, Lauren, I'm not a matriarch, I'm just a piece of outdated furniture that doesn't fit the aesthetic of her modern life. I dressed with clinical precision this morning. I chose my cream-colored Chanel suit, the one I bought on Fifth Avenue years ago that still fits perfectly. I pinned a vintage pearl brooch to my lapel and pulled my silver hair into a tight, professional bun. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman who had fought for every inch of her success. My hands are spotted with age, but these are the hands that signed the deeds to the first properties in Williamsburg before it was cool. These hands built a legacy that supports the very lifestyle Lauren enjoys, while she looks down her nose at me. My son, David, called me around 11 a.m. Hey Mom, we're heading to that new bistro, the Gilded Lily, for brunch. Lauren made a reservation. You should meet us there at noon. No Happy Mother's Day in his voice, just a logistical update. David is a good man, or at least he used to be, but he's become soft, dictated by the whims of a woman who sees my existence as an inconvenience. When I arrived at the restaurant, a trendy, overpriced spot in a building I happen to know very well, I saw them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. David, Lauren, and my grandson Leo. They were already seated at a prominent table in the center of the room. As I approached, I heard Lauren's voice, sharp and cold as a winter morning in Chicago. She isn't sitting with us, David. The table is only for 4, and I invited my sister. Put her somewhere else. She eats separately. The hostess looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. I stood there, invisible to them for a moment, absorbing the sting of those words. She eats separately. As if I were a pet that needed to be fed in the kitchen. I walked up to the table, my heels clicking firmly on the polished concrete floor. David looked up, his face flushing a deep shade of red. Oh Mom, you're here. Look, there was a mix-up with the reservation. I heard, David, I said, my voice calm and level. I turned to Lauren, who didn't even have the grace to look ashamed. She was busy adjusting her designer sunglasses. Martha, it's just that this place is so crowded, Lauren said with a fake saccharine smile. We managed to get you a lovely small table over by the corner. It's much quieter there. Better for someone your age. The corner was a tiny, wobbly table near the swinging doors of the kitchen, where the smell of industrial cleaner competed with the aroma of truffle fries. It was the ultimate insult. I see, I replied. I didn't argue. I didn't cause a scene. I simply walked to the small table and sat down. I opened the menu, not looking at the prices, because I already knew the overhead costs of this entire establishment. I knew the interest rates on their commercial loan. And most importantly, I knew exactly whose name was on the master lease of this building. As I sat there, ignored by my own family while they laughed and toasted with mimosas at the center table, I felt a familiar coldness settle over me. It wasn't sadness. It was the cold, calculating clarity that had made me a millionaire by the age of 40. Lauren thinks she's playing a game of social standing. She doesn't realize she's playing against the person who owns the board. I sat there for a while, just watching. Eve always said that you can learn more about a business from its worst seat than from its best. From my vantage point by the kitchen, I saw the cracks in the foundation of the Gilded Lily. I saw the way the floorboards were scuffed and gray near the service entrance. I noticed a water stain on the ceiling directly above a large family table. A clear sign that the plumbing leak from the second floor hadn't been fixed, despite what the building manager had reported to me last month. I watched the servers. They were exhausted, their smiles brittle. I overheard two of them whispering as they rushed past my tiny table. "The ice machine is down again," one muttered. "And the manager refuses to call the repairman. Says the landlord is tightening the screws on the budget." I almost laughed. I am the landlord. And I haven't raised the rent on this block in 3 years. I pulled out my phone. A top-of-the-line model I usually keep tucked away, so as not to confuse Lauren with my grasp of the 21st century. I didn't open Facebook or look for recipes. I went straight to my cloud drive, to the folder labeled Commercial Properties, North District. I pulled up the lease agreement for this very restaurant. Section 14.b. Maintenance of Image and Service Standards. It stated clearly that the tenant was obligated to maintain an environment of respect and decorum that did not negatively impact the reputation of the property. Discriminating against a customer based on age, and segregating them to a service area? That was a textbook violation of the hospitality standards I demand from my tenants. But the real kicker was Section 21. Renewal and Adjustments. The lease was up for renewal next month. We were currently in the 30-day grace period for negotiations. I looked at my hands again. These hands had scrubbed floors in Queens when Arthur and I were first starting out. These hands had hauled crates of hardware in the rain, before we could afford our first small storefront. I remembered a rainy afternoon 15 years ago. Arthur was already ill, but his mind was still as sharp as a diamond. "Martha," he had said, taking my hand. "You're stronger than I am. When I'm gone, don't let the vultures eat you. Not the ones outside, and certainly not the ones inside this house." "Don't talk like that, Arthur," I whispered. "I mean it. You have a heart of gold, but the head of a general. Use your head, Martha. Keep the heart for those who earn it." I realized then that I had disobeyed him. I had kept my heart exposed and my head tucked away in a nightstand drawer for the last 5 years. I had let Lauren trample over me at every family dinner, calling me old-fashioned and out of touch. I had stayed quiet to keep the peace, so David wouldn't have to choose between his wife and his mother. But looking at David now, watching him cut his steak into tiny, surgical pieces without ever looking my way, I realized he had already chosen. And he hadn't chosen me. The sadness evaporated. In its place came a cold, absolute mental clarity. I beckoned the waiter, the one with the kind eyes. "What's your name, son?" I asked. "Caleb, ma'am," he replied, looking genuinely sorry for my situation. "Caleb, be honest with me. How does the manager, Mr. Miller, treat the staff?" He hesitated, glancing nervously toward the office. It's a job, ma'am. Don't lie to me. I have grandsons your age." I saw how he spoke to the hostess earlier. Caleb sighed, his shoulders dropping. "It's hard. He docks our tips if a glass breaks. He makes us pull double shifts without overtime, and he always says if we don't like it, there are 100 people outside waiting for our jobs. He says the owner of the building is a tyrant who demands every penny." I tightened my grip on my wine glass. So Miller was using my company's name to justify his own petty tyranny. "I see," I said softly. "Thank you, Caleb. That was very instructive." I took a small notepad from my purse. I wrote, "Audit payroll and labor conditions for service staff. Monday morning. 8:00 am sharp." I tucked that note into my pocket. Then I pulled out a black matte credit card, a corporate centurion with no preset limit. "Caleb," I said, my voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Go to Mr. Miller's office. Right now. Interrupt whatever he's doing. Tell him that Martha M., the president of Oakwood Realty Group, is sitting at the broom closet table and wants to speak with him immediately." Caleb froze in his tracks. His eyes widened as he glanced at the black card in my hands. In the world of New York real estate, the name Oakwood Realty Group opened every door for the restaurant business. It was akin to the name of God. He nodded, gave a slight bow, and hurried toward the manager's office. I watched him go inside. Through the glass partition, I could see Mr. Miller, a heavy-set man with a face the color of an overripe tomato. At first, he tried to wave Caleb away, but then upon hearing my name, he practically jumped out of his chair. He bolted from the office so fast he nearly collided with a waitress carrying a tray of dirty dishes. Meanwhile, at the center table, Lauren was laughing loudly, telling her sister how difficult it was these days to find decent help who know their place. David just nodded, staring into his plate. They didn't even notice the manager scurrying toward me, nearly stumbling over his own feet. "Mrs. Marshall," Miller gasped, wiping sweat from his forehead with a silk handkerchief. "What? What an honor. I had no idea you'd be visiting us today. There has been a terrible mistake, a misunderstanding with the hostess. Please let me move you immediately to our best window table. We just had a spot open up in the VIP lounge." I didn't budge. I didn't even look up from my glass of water. "Mr. Miller," I said, my voice ice cold. "The mistake wasn't the hostess's. The mistake was made by my daughter-in-law, who is sitting right over there." I gave a slight nod toward their table. "But you as the manager allowed a client, any client, not just me, to be humiliated and shunted to the kitchen in my building because someone decided they were more important than others." Miller turned pale. "Mrs. Marshall, I'll fix everything. Champagne on the house? The best steak on the menu?" "No," I cut him off. "Champagne won't help. You've been using my company's name to bully your staff, justifying your own greed and poor management. Eve reviewed your employees' feedback and the condition of the ceiling in this room. Next week, I am sending a commission here for a full audit of labor conditions and health code compliance. And as for your lease renewal, we will discuss that at my office on Monday. If you are even a minute late, the contract will be terminated unilaterally for breach of image obligations." Miller looked like he was about to have a heart attack. He started to stammer something, but I held up my hand, silencing him. "Now," I said, "you are going to go to that table and tell my daughter-in-law that due to a technical error, their reservation has been canceled. And if they wish to finish their meal, they will have to move. Here. To the kitchen. To my spot." I stood up, adjusted my Chanel jacket, and walked toward their table. Lauren was just in the middle of ordering a second bottle of expensive wine. "Oh, Martha, are you still here?" she tossed out, not even looking at me. "We thought you'd finished your soup and left already." "I'm just getting started, Lauren," I replied with a smile that would make a Wall Street shark shiver. At that moment, a pale Mr. Miller approached. "I am so sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Marshall, but there has been an issue with the booking for this table. The system flagged an error. You need to vacate this spot within 5 minutes. We can offer you a table in the corner, near the service entrance." "What?" Lauren shrieked, nearly dropping her glass. "Do you know who we are? We are regulars. David, do something." David looked back and forth between the manager and me, confused. He was beginning to realize that something was happening that was far beyond his wife's whims. "Lauren, dear," I said, leaning in toward her. "This spot really is better suited for your age. It's quieter. You'll be able to discuss your plans for the future, which, I'm afraid, will be much more modest starting tomorrow." I turned to my son. "David, the bill is paid. By me. But if you choose to stay and move to that table, don't bother calling me for the next month. I'm going to be busy. Very busy." I turned around and walked toward the exit. The entire room was watching me. I felt like I was 30 again, and I had just closed my first $1 million deal. I walked out of the restaurant, the heavy brass-handled doors closing behind me with a satisfying thud. The Manhattan air was crisp, carrying the scent of roasted coffee and the distant salt of the Hudson River. I didn't call an Uber. I didn't wait for David to run after me. Instead, I walked to the corner where a black Lincoln Navigator was idling. My driver, Robert, stepped out immediately to open the door. He's been with me for 12 years. He knows when I'm in business mode just by the way I set my jaw. "Everything all right, Mrs. Marshall?" he asked, his tone respectful. "Everything is finally falling into place, Robert," I said, sliding into the cool leather interior. "Take me to the office on Madison. And call Sarah. Tell her I want a full audit of the Gilded Lily lease agreement and a background check on the manager, Miller, by the end of the day." As the car glided through the city streets, I looked out at the skyline. I saw the steel skeletons of new skyscrapers and the weathered bricks of the old ones. This city is a living thing, and like any living thing, it sheds what is no longer useful. Lauren thought she could discard me like an old coat, but she forgot that in this family, I am the one who owns the closet. By the time we reached the office, my phone was buzzing incessantly. It was David. I let it ring. Then came the text from Lauren. Martha, this is ridiculous. You humiliated us in front of everyone. That manager was a maniac. You need to fix this. I deleted the message without replying. She still didn't get it. She thought I was a fixer for her problems, not the architect of her consequences. I spent the next 3 hours in my mahogany row office. Sarah, my lead counsel, met me with a stack of files. You were right, Martha, Sarah said, pushing a folder across my desk. The restaurant has been cutting corners. They've been misreporting their gross receipts to lower their percentage rent, and there are 3 outstanding OSHA complaints from the kitchen staff that were quietly settled under the table. I leaned back in my chair, looking at my age-spotted hands. Prepare the eviction notice based on the breach of the ethics and reporting clauses. And Sarah? Call the local labor board. If they're mistreating those kids in the kitchen, I want them held accountable. Every single dollar they withheld from their staff needs to be paid back with interest. And your son's involvement? Sarah asked hesitantly. David is an adult, I said, though it pained my heart to say it. If he wants to share a table with a woman who treats people like garbage, he can share the bill too. Effective immediately, I'm freezing the discretionary trust fund I set up for their mortgage. If Lauren wants to live in a Greenwich mansion, she can start earning the commission herself. I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of duty. I wasn't just protecting my money, I was protecting the legacy Arthur and I had built. We didn't build this empire to fund the arrogance of a woman who doesn't know the value of a hard day's work. A week has passed. New York does not forgive weakness, and Lauren learned that lesson faster than I expected. On Monday morning, my Madison Avenue office was silent, save for the steady hum of the air conditioning. Mr. Miller, the restaurant manager, sat in the waiting room for 2 hours before I deigned to see him. When he finally walked in, he was no longer that self-assured tyrant. He looked like a man who had just realized the sheer scale of the abyss he was falling into. I did not renew the lease. The Gilded Lily will close in 30 days. However, I made sure that Caleb and the other kitchen staff received glowing letters of recommendation for some of the city's top establishments owned by my partners. As for David and Lauren, the calls haven't stopped. First it was anger, then pleading, and finally, ice-cold realization. Without my subsidies, their life in an elite Connecticut suburb began to crumble. A mortgage in the U.S. is an inexorable clock. If you don't feed it dollars, it explodes. Yesterday, I asked Robert to drive down Fifth Avenue. I saw Lauren. She was walking out of a high-end department store, but she wasn't carrying any designer shopping bags. She walked with her head down, and when she spotted my car, she froze. In her eyes there was not only fear but a belated sense of respect. She finally understood. Respect isn't bought with a luxury handbag, it is built over decades of flawless reputation and an iron will. I looked at my hands. The spots, the wrinkles. They aren't signs of old age. They are badges of honor. Every wrinkle is a winning bet, every scar is a crisis survived. Robert, I said, leaning back into the soft leather seat. Turn on that old jazz Arthur used to love. It's a perfect evening for a glass of bourbon and some silence. My name is Martha Marshall. I am 70 years old. And no matter where they seat me, in the center of the room or in a dark corner by the kitchen, I will always be the head of the table. Because the table belongs to me. Thank you for listening to my story all the way through. If it resonated with you, give it a like, comment on what touched you the most, and be sure to mention where you're from. Subscribe to the channel. There are plenty more stories to come.